For all our trips out here to Napa Valley, one of my favorites is always catching up with Jean Hoefliger.
Yeah, and after all these years, he still doesn't know how to pronounce my name. That's pathetic.
He's a winemaker at Alf's place.
Wow, he's drunk. Cheers to you, my old friend.
Let's do that,
another sip.
Cheers.
This podcast is sponsored by Release Winery. Every wine tells a story. Each growing season, it's our goal to create an artisan Napa Valley wine of exceptional quality. Join us as the story of this ultra-limited wine continues. Learn more at releasewinery.com.
Well, no, we have started AXR a few years ago, making the wine elsewhere, actually at Alpha Omega in the cellar over there, because it's easier to control the product when you have such a great team and such a great location. But new because they decided to purchase a winery and an estate on Highway 29. The project started because of a few people, Kelly, Don, and Mark, that wanted a second career and a passion, and so they thought that to start a wine brand, is definitely a good way to spend the rest of your life. That was their initial thought. What really changed is the fact that they now realize it actually takes a lot of work. It's not only, making the wine is the almost easy part. Positioning it and selling it is the hard part. And so they're in the middle of all that. Thank God I'm only making wine.
So yeah, you got the easy job.
As I usually do. You surround yourself with good people, with great vineyards, and there you go. Nothing else to do. The challenge for me is only proportional to the importance you give to things and how you give the importance. Winemaking and wine in general is not saving lives. And I wake up in the morning and it turns me on. It turns me on because I found a way to express myself in wine. But when you are in a valley and in a region like Napa, which is not only extremely consistent in its growing season, but has the diversity of soil and terroir that it does, it's really not rocket science if you understand to let your emotion express themselves. It's one thing to think that wine is a science. It's not. There's a part of it that is scientific. There's a part of it, the chemistry part, that is number-based. But ultimately, wine is based on taste and nothing else. And my job is to create an emotion. The people's job is to taste it, like it or not. That's taste. But I don't save lives. And yes, 2017 was an extremely difficult year because of human tragedy more than anything else. But at the end of the day, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that in this valley, the fire's got to put everybody back on a playing level, independently of wealth, religion, background, race, whatever it is. And for me, I think it made that valley grow stronger at a much different level. I tend to spend quite a bit of time in the vineyard indeed, because that's where wine is made to start with. And when we see what happened to 2017 with the fires, we understand even more the importance of the vineyard, not only for the wine, but for fire breaks in the case of the fire. I think that we will have to rethink a little bit the plantation rights in the Napa Valley for that reason, because I think the fire will come back, and obviously vineyards were a great help to fight that fire. The vineyard is the soul of the wine, and without a soul, you really have no interest. And I think that that's where the attention has to be paid, is first understanding. And when I was describing the DNA and finding the DNA of a new brand, it's the same with the vineyard. Finding the DNA of a vineyard is going to dictate where your brand goes. And that doesn't happen. Yes, I can visit a new vineyard and say, oh, it looks promising because of the exposure, the soil analysis, and the clone and the rootstock and so on. It's a whole different ballgame to make the wine 3 or 4 or 5 years in a row and understand how the plants interact, not only with the vintage itself, but with yourself. I think it's the greatest vintage since 2002.
Really?
It's one of the vintage that turned me on the most, and for many different reasons. Because I think in French we say, without struggle, there's no glory. We had struggles, and we had plenty of it. We had flooding at the beginning of this season. We had heat spells, and we had, of course, the fires. Despite all of that, we are showing wines that are extremely dense and balanced. Most of the literature says when you have fire and smoke taint problems, you should decrease the extraction, shorten your time on skin. I've decided to do the polar opposite. I actually increase by 60% the extraction up front, because I said instead of making wines that are weak and will have to be reverse osmosis or whatever solution or matter you want to take in your own hands, I'd rather have a big wine and a dense wine and a good wine than not. So I actually pushed extraction up front by a lot and was able to really reach levels of complexity and balance that I have not seen for a long time. On both sides and on the after the fire for sure, yeah, that it was key for me, because the literature says that it's extracted, or the glycol and methyl glycol are extracted fairly fast, or shorten your time on skin, for example. It doesn't mean anything, because it's now known that it's 2 or 3 days only. So who's going to make a red in less than 2 or 3 days? Nobody. Yeah. So might as well put something in place that has the structure to either swallow these stains or at least to support them better.
So you're confident so far in what you've been tasting?
I see that on the average of everything that I've tasted that I make, 10% will have taint, which is a blessing in disguise, but it came through a long, long struggle. It's a good segue to explain what happened, because I think people will realize how it was. I was sleeping in Napa Valley on the night of the 8th. I was woken up at 12 by my girlfriend to say, you got to look at the news. Something a little bit bigger than what we thought is happening. And I saw the extent of the fire. And, of course, outside was already snowing ashes. And I said, I have to do something. Anticipation is a key to a successful business. And so I decided to wake up, take my car, and drive up Valley. And went to the winery, went to Alpha Omega, and told the crew to put everything in lockdown. We lost power at the time. And to go home. I stayed at the winery alone, not only looking at the fires, but mainly thinking and asking myself, what can I do? And I said, we need to get in whatever is left to get in. And people think it's very little. It's not. It was 250 tons. Wow. So I started organizing that in the middle of the night through text, through people that were obviously not exactly sleeping. And my vineyard crew came in and said, we would like to pick. And then I had to ethically ask them, despite the conditions, and they said, yeah, absolutely. We don't put all our efforts into growing these grapes to let it all go when it really matters. So I said, okay. And so they ended up picking 26 hours in a row. Nonstop. I was at the time just pretty much traveling to Target, loading cars with sodas, waters, snacks, sandwiches, and just feeding them. And the commitment to these guys, to not only quality, but just grapes themselves, is for me an absolutely amazing testament to the valley and to these people. It's a business based on people. Later, when we started processing all that fruit, you can imagine that when you suddenly have 250 tons in 2 days, so yeah, it was picked very beginning of the fire, so chances of smoke taint are almost non-existent. That's the great part. But when they arrive at the winery, you have a different problem, logistical, is where to put all these grapes. And at the time, as you know, I'm pretty big in barrel fermentation, and the tanks are full. So what do? Well, I have the barrel fermentation solution. So I decided to pop a lot of head, and we have an employee parking lot that ended up being filled completely, outside, inside, everywhere. We had barrels everywhere. Wow. but the grapes were safe because these barrels are sealed, and we had no problem. And after 2 or 3 days of the fire, I will always remember the assistant winemaker came in, and both Saul and Bastien came in, and they looked at me after X amount of days at 18 hours a day and said, almost teary, had tears in their eyes, says, please tell us that we're not doing all this for nothing. And when I looked at them after my morning tasting, they were asking me, and I said, no, it looks absolutely great. And the quality is out of this world. They said, okay, put a smile on their face, went back to work. And I think that really represents both sides of the equation, on the human side, the vineyard side and the winery side, of the care of people. So sure, I mean, the role of being in front of your camera, in front of your mic is mine. And you know, the glorious winemaker and the starification of the winemaker. But the real heroes, the real stars of 2017 are these people. You know, sure, we work hard and I work out too, but it's them. And without people like that, it's a whole different ballgame. And that's also why I think that I fell in love with the 2017 vintage, because it represents quality, pure dedication, and human heart. In an event like we did have in 2017, it just shows the length, the depth of the global equation of wine. It's never about one person. It's about a team.